The fourth era of the Federal Reserve Note, detailed history. Well, we move from Series 1928 to 1934. Now let's make an immediate comparison between the two so that we can see what has changed. A lot obviously is the same. They look pretty much the same, but let's just take this into some detail. Now, first of all, probably the most important change is the one that happens to this verbiage here. It used to say redeemable in gold on demand at the United States Treasury or in gold or lawful money at any Federal Reserve Bank. Now, that is all replaced with, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable in lawful money at the United States Treasury or at any Federal Reserve Bank. So we talk about how it's a legal tender for all debts, public and private, which in the large size, some of the non-Federal Reserve notes, especially the ones like the legal tender notes and some of the others, you see that it will actually say in the equivalent language that it would be useful for most things, but there'd be some things you couldn't do. You couldn't use it. The government couldn't use it to pay interest on the public debt, i.e. the national debt. And on the other hand, you couldn't use it to pay for customs and that sort of things. And I don't know, tariffs or something. I don't know. Something you couldn't use it for. But you could use it for most other things. So, like salaries and ordinary salaries and purchases and that sort of thing. So that would be the big change. And as you can see, both the darker green and the lighter green ink for the Treasury seal and numbers continues on into the 1934. So you see you have a new series, 1934, where before you had 1928. And it still has it in the two places. So in this case, this is an A, which is the Bank of Boston. Now for Series 1934, you begin with Julian and Morgenthau. So Morgenthau is the new addition for this era. Now we have, however, some interesting things happening here. All right, the $5, as you can see, is still pretty much substantially the same thing you remember before. The same front, the same back. But we also have here the Hawaii note for World War II. And yeah, there's also war notes for North Africa, but those are all silver certificates. And so, for that matter, are all $1 notes, even the ones for Hawaii. And since this is about Federal Reserve notes, I'm only doing the Federal Reserve notes. But here we go. This is a Series 1934 for Hawaii. Same signatures. It now has Hawaii here, and now we actually have something different on the back. So the back is normally the same, except you have the word Hawaii in hollow letters all across the back. So now that gives us something interesting to look at. So, Series 1934. Now, Series 1934 for the 10, there is no wartime note. There's just the new signatures and no more talking about gold. And all that not talking about gold simply relates to the fact that there is, okay, well, let's get back to this here in the $20 1934. Again, it's also still all Federal Reserve note. Will pay the bearer on demand, the amount, $20 in this case. The Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, Massachusetts. Once again, Julian and Morgenthau, a somewhat familiar reverse of the White House, or White House it just says. And again, 1934 without an A also exists with the Hawaii, brown seal. These Hawaii ones that alone are the only time a Federal Reserve note ever has a brown seal. So now, because of these Hawaii notes, Federal Reserve notes have had red seals in the beginning, followed by blue seals, then green seals, and in this brief wartime era, even brown seals. So there's the $50, and again, it's a legal tender for all debts, public and private, redeemable in lawful money. And again, nothing about gold. So we talk about the gold, no change there, because of course they're 1934, because in 1933 the gold was all asked to be turned in, and that went not only for gold itself, but even for gold certificates. So you could keep about $100 out as for souvenir or something, but you can't use it. You're not supposed to. They remained legal tender, but if a bank gets them, they won't pay them back out again. That's how it works. So obviously you didn't want to spend them unless you absolutely had to. So now there's the 500. So that's continuing right along. And here's the 1000. And the 500 has its own reverse, as I say. It's a nice clean $500 reverse. And then here's the $1,000, all series of 1934. Okay. Well, the next phase continues both the wartime notes, okay, and the other changes. It doesn't even change the signatures. And indeed, apparently doesn't seem to change much of anything that I've been able to discern. I think there's some difference in the way they're printed. I think more notes to a sheet of notes or something like that. So some change like that, which is so subtle it doesn't seem to make any discernible difference in the notes themselves. But they go from 1934 to 1934A, and it's still Julian and Morgenthau. And even the Hawaii notes continue. As you see here, the brown seal, Hawaii on the reverse. Okay, and now this time, the $10 note also comes both as the regular $10 for stateside and the $10 34A for Hawaii. There weren't any 34 no A, $10 for Hawaii. Conversely, the North Africa Silver Certificate, the only one without the A, is a very tiny number of 1934 no A $10 silver certificates for the North Africa. But at least that exists. So there's Hawaii here. Okay, and again, the brown seal. And of course, the brown seal continues also for $20, which also continues its standard reverse. And the Hawaii one, again, 34A, the same reverse, but with Hawaii as in hollow letters all across the back, and 2 places on front, and all the brown letters in the serial. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so 34A, the $50, just continues on the change in the manufacturing. That's all, nothing else. And again, for the 100, same deal. And once again, the 500. And even finally, the 1000. So, now, shortly after the war, we finally have a change of the Secretary of the Treasury. Vinson now takes the place of Morgenthau. Julian, however, continues. He was there a little bit before Morgenthau. As you recall, he comes on while Woden is on the other side, and there were a couple of notes, both of them silver certificates, that have Julian over here, but Woden on that side. But those are not even Series 1934. We get up to Series 1934, and it's Julian and Morgenthau now replaced with Vincent. Julian and Vincent for 34B. Now, I should point out, the bigger denominations, again, they exist for 34. Supposedly, some 1934As would have been were printed for 5,000 and 10,000. Both, I already don't have 5,000s and 10,000s anyway, but both would be very infinitesimal numbers when it comes to the B, 5,000 and 10,000, whereas the A, or even the A as well as the B, because for those denominations, the original production just with 1934, no letter, was really all they needed. So the token amount of the others, they don't even seem to exist. Some were made, none are known. Who knows? Now, we do have one other change here going from 34A to 34B. Besides going to Vincent, that is a small change in this little indicator of the federal bank. For the 34A, it says, as all previous ones did in this thing, the Federal Reserve Bank of, the location. Now for 1934B, it becomes Federal Reserve Bank of New York, wherever. See, the is gone. See, the is there before federal. Now it's just federal. So they add a little bit of decoration there and there to absorb the space that would have gone to the and moving things over where they just had the dots. So that is a change made for Series 1934B. So that and Vinson. So, and here's the back again. Back, no more Hawaii, and other than that, now the backs don't change. There's the $10 of the Treasury. So 34B, Vinson, and now just Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, Federal Reserve Bank, 34B, Julian and Vinson. Okay, nothing unusual in the back. $50 again, 34B, Vinson, Julian here. All right, nothing unusual on the back. Oh yeah, and Federal Reserve Bank, and $100, same thing, Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, okay, or wherever. So 34B, Vinson. Now, apparently there were some $500 bills made, but only a tiny number, and none seem to be known to collectors. I believe, however, they would still have had the name of Vinson here and Federal Reserve instead of the Federal Reserve Bank. But that was all. Apparently, there never were made any $1,000 notes for 1934B. However, there were tiny numbers of $5,000 and $10,000 notes, 1934B. Again, minuscule numbers. None of it seem to be known to have survived. However, we get to the next level. We're now almost done with the bigger denominations. The 5,000 and the 10,000 are gone. But the next letter, so that's 1934C, is for Snyder. So still Julian, but now Snyder. Same reverse. Okay. $10 34C, Julian and Snyder. Familiar reverse. Now here we do get something a little bit interesting. For the $20, we have the original White House, and then it gets redrawn and becomes the White House instead of White House. You can see the trees have grown quite a bit, and there's some construction. So, and they're both 1934C, so that's kind of neat. So, the 50 continues the same. The 100 continues the same. And there's even a 1000, which was the last big bill made. And I have a picture of one. It was a specimen, and it has just Federal Reserve Bank, and it has Snyder over here. So pretty neat, huh? It had a reverse too. This was a specimen. It isn't even a real ordinary note. And there's still 1934D. Now we've changed this side to Clarke. So Clarke and Snyder. So 34D, Clarke and Snyder, 34D, Clarke and Snyder, 34D, Clarke and Snyder, 34D, Clarke and Snyder, and all the familiar reverses. So our next one will be Series 1950, which will continue with Clarke and Snyder, but we'll see has some further changes in the way some of the things are shown. But we will deal with that in the next in the series. And at this point, 34D, everything above $100 is no longer being made.